Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Right now, your brain is likely running this hidden background program.
Yeah, one that is, quietly draining like 40% of your daily productivity.
Exactly. So today we are unpacking a really comprehensive and honestly pretty ruthless article. It's titled Mastering Single Tasking by Felix Römer.
Right, the founder of SmartKeys.org.
Yeah. And he's carrying like 15 years of deep experience in e-commerce and digital marketing. So he has really witnessed the modern workplace evolve into this constant battleground for our attention.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total battleground.
And he has synthesized a strategy to fight back. So, okay, let's unpack this. I mean, treating your brain like a web browser with 50 tabs open might feel productive at first, but eventually, the fan starts whirring, the battery drains, and the whole system just freezes up.
Yeah, framing this deep dive as an essential strategy for any modern professional is, well, it's the most accurate way to approach his work.
Right. Because the stakes are actually really high for you as the
know.
listener.
They are. The modern business landscape is basically suffering from an epidemic of fractured attention.
Yeah. Epidemic is the right word.
I mean, if you are trying to reclaim your time or understand the mechanics of your own focus and actually stay ahead of the curve, single tasking is no longer just a soft skill or, a wellness trend.
It's not just about feeling relaxed.
No, not at all. Protecting your cognitive bandwidth has become this hard strategic imperative for survival and knowledge work.
So if that mental battery is constantly draining, what is physically happening in the brain to cause that crash?
Well, that's the thing.
Because in the moment, checking a Slack notification while writing a quarterly report, it doesn't feel like a massive expenditure of energy, right?
Right.
It just feels like keeping up with the flow of business.
Yeah, but the deceptive nature of that fatigue, it comes down to this biological and psychological metric called cognitive load.
Okay, cognitive load.
Yeah. Think of it as your finite working memory.
Yeah.
It's like the mental RAM you use to hold complex information, synthesize data, solve problems.
Which we only have so much of.
Exactly. So when you attempt to juggle multiple streams of complex information, your cognitive load doesn't just increase, it fragments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So to elevate your browser analogy, context switching is actually more like trying to play a high-stakes game of chess.
Okay, I like this.
But every single time it is your turn to make a move, someone forces you to pack up the entire board, walk into another room, and set all the pieces back up from memory before you can touch a pawn.
Oh, that sounds exhausting. And doing that 50 times a day, that's what researchers call the performance tax, really.
Precisely the term, yeah. Every time your attention snaps away from that quarterly report and onto a chat channel, your prefrontal cortex has to actively disengage from one complex rule set.
Right.
And then load up an entirely different one.
And then you have to go back.
Right. When you finally return to the report, your brain has to reorient. Like, where was I? What was the context of this sentence?
Yeah, I do that all the time.
We all do. And that re-engagement phase causes your error rate to just skyrocket.
It's terrible.
A deep thinking task that should require 60 minutes of unbroken focus ends up taking 2 hours. And, the structural integrity of the work is measurably compromised.
But it isn't just a loss of time, though, is it? Because the article dives into the biological toll this takes. It's essentially a dopamine trap mixed with a cortisol spike.
Yeah, it is a terrible cocktail for your nervous system.
Right, because you get that ping.
Exactly. Your brain gets this tiny, cheap dopamine hit every time you clear a new email or check a notification. It feels rewarding in the micro moment.
Like you're getting things done.
But simultaneously, the underlying friction of constantly packing and unpacking that mental chessboard, it triggers a low-grade, sustained fight-or-flight response.
Wow.
Cortisol just floods your system. You are putting your body under real physiological stress.
And I imagine over weeks and months that adds up.
Oh, absolutely. This information overload leads directly to emotional exhaustion and the kind of profound burnout that completely derails careers.
Okay, but wait. Are you saying we can never do two things at once? Well, what if I'm folding laundry, right? Or I'm walking to get a coffee while listening to a strategic planning meeting? Is my brain still paying that massive performance tax?
This raises an important question. And Römer makes a very careful distinction in the text between destructive multitasking and what he calls task layering.
Task layering.
Okay.
Yeah.
You absolutely can do two things at once, provided you follow a strict neurological boundary.
Which is?
You can pair a routine, low-risk physical activity with a light mental task. Walking to get coffee, doing the dishes, folding laundry. These rely heavily on the motor cortex and basal ganglia.
Right. They operate on physical autopilot.
Exactly.
They don't demand the prefrontal cortex to actively solve novel problems. I mean, my brain already knows how to fold a shirt.
Right. So layering that physical motion with listening to a deep dive or having a casual catch-up call is completely fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the golden rule of task layering is that you must never combine two demanding cognitive tasks.
Never two cognitive tasks.
Never. If both activities require conscious, deliberate thought, working memory, and problem solving, they will violently compete for the exact same neural pathways.
Oh, man.
If you try to write a sensitive client email while listening to a complex financial presentation, you aren't doing both. You are just rapidly, poorly switching between failing at one and failing at the other.
That is so true. I mean, we've all been on those calls where someone is clearly typing an email while pretending to listen.
Yeah, and they always ask you to repeat the question.
Always. So, if we know our neurobiology simply cannot handle dual cognitive loads, how do we stop the modern office from forcing us into it?
That's the real challenge.
Because we have to architect our environment to protect our focus. And Römer suggests starting with something quite confronting, a one-day distraction audit.
Oh, the distraction audit, yes. It requires you to become this objective, almost clinical observer of your own behavioral failures.
It sounds painful.
It is. For one full workday, you do not try to fix your habits. You simply log them. You keep a running tally of every single time your attention is hijacked.
And it's everything, right? Like a coworker talking loudly, an alert popping up on your watch.
The delivery driver ringing the bell.
Yes. Or that really insidious habit of opening a new browser tab just to read the news while waiting for a file to download.
Oh, that's the worst one. But by the end of that single day, you are left with this highly revealing, data-driven map of your vulnerabilities.
You literally see where your focus goes to die.
Exactly. You begin to see the environmental friction points that are bleeding your cognitive load dry. And once you have that data, you systematically eliminate the friction.
Right.
The text heavily advocates for a minimal physical workspace to reduce decision fatigue. If your desk is littered with old coffee mugs, loose mail, 3 different notepads,
Guilty.
your brain is subconsciously processing those objects. It's making micro-decisions about them every time you glance down.
That is so wild to think about. Clearing the desk is obviously step one. But the article also brings up adding a natural element, like a small plant.
Yes.
Which isn't just for aesthetics. It taps into the biophilia effect, where brief glances at nature actually help restore directed attention and lower that cortisol response we mentioned earlier.
It's a real biological reset.
And you add in a single visual cue, like a specific lamp you only turn on when doing deep work, and you are actively conditioning your brain to recognize when it is time to drop into a flow state.
It's all about cues.
But let's be real, the physical desk is the easy part. The digital environment is where the real war for our attention is fought.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a fascinating irony in Römer's approach to the digital environment.
What's the irony?
Well, we have to deploy highly specific digital tools to protect ourselves from the broader digital overload. You use focused technology to fight tool sprawl.
Oh, right. The article highlights some brilliant examples of this, like instead of just listening to regular music with distracting lyrics, it recommends phase-sequenced concentration audio.
Like focus at will.
Yeah, exactly. Focus at will, which is scientifically engineered to mask human speech frequencies and keep your brain in a state of flow.
The science behind that is incredible.
And then there is the behavioral design side, using gamified focus timers like Forest. You plant a virtual tree on your screen when you begin a task.
And if you pick up your phone to scroll social media before the timer is up,
the tree withers and dies.
Right. It leverages loss aversion to keep you anchored. You don't want to kill the little tree.
Nobody wants to kill the virtual tree.
But those tools manage the psychological side. Römer also addresses the mechanical side of digital friction.
How so?
He points to automation tools like Zapier, or even robust built-in email filtering rules to handle repetitive, low-value data tasks.
Oh, getting the robots to do the busy work.
Exactly. By letting software handle the robotic routing of information, you preserve your finite mental RAM for the high-level human synthesis that actually drives value.
But the most counterintuitive advice in the entire article has absolutely nothing to do with software.
The paper pad.
Yes.
Yeah.
The physical paper capture pad sitting right next to the keyboard.
That analog tool is arguably the most powerful defense against context switching.
It really is.
When you are 40 minutes into a deep work session and a sudden urgent thought pops into your head like you need to buy a birthday gift or you remember a client you forgot to email.
The worst timing.
Right. But the absolute worst thing you can do in that moment is open a new browser tab to handle it.
Because opening that tab shatters the context boundary. You go to buy the gift, you see an ad, you check a separate email, and suddenly you are miles away from the project you were supposed to be finishing.
Yeah, you're totally lost. So the paper capture pad acts as an external hard drive for your working memory.
I love that framing.
You just jot the intrusive thought down on paper, physically offloading it from your brain. You trust that it is captured safely for later, and you immediately return to your deep work without ever leaving your primary digital window.
It's an incredibly elegant mechanism, and you pair that with pre-task rituals, right? Like making a specific cup of tea or doing 2 minutes of box breathing before you open a difficult spreadsheet.
Yeah.
You are physically cueing your nervous system, signaling the transition from reactive firefighting mode into active, intentional focus.
So assuming your environment is audited, your desk is clear, the plant is watered, and the capture pad is ready. The next strategic pillar is how you actually structure the architecture of your day.
Right, the actual hours on the clock. We all know the standard Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes of intense work followed by a 5-minute break.
Sure.
It's a great starting point for basic tasks. But Römer argues that for complex knowledge work, 25 minutes is often exactly the moment you are finally overcoming the initial friction and dropping into a deep flow state.
Which means forcing yourself to stop then is completely counterproductive.
Exactly.
Which is why the text introduces focus sprints, extending those blocks anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes.
That's a long time to stay locked in.
It is, but you match the duration of the time block to the cognitive weight of the task.
Yep.
A complex engineering problem or a strategic marketing narrative requires a long runway just to load the variables into your working memory.
And to handle the tiny distractions that don't need a full sprint, you apply the 2-minute rule.
Right.
If an administrative microtask pops up and takes less than 2 minutes, you don't schedule it, you don't put it in a project manager, you just execute it instantly to clear it from your cognitive load.
It's just gone.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The article outlines a concept called flow time.
Flow time. Yeah, this is great.
It throws rigid timers out the window entirely. If you are coding or writing and the work is just pouring out of you flawlessly, you don't stop.
You don't interrupt the magic.
No. It's like surfing. You wouldn't set a watch alarm to force yourself to jump off a perfect wave, you know? You ride the wave until it naturally breaks, and then you paddle back out and rest.
Flow time honors your natural biological energy peaks rather than an arbitrary clock. I think it's brilliant.
Same.
But to make any of these frameworks function, you have to organize them using time blocking and batching. You ruthlessly group similar tasks together.
Like with like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All deep creative work in one block. All administrative emails in another. All status meetings clustered together.
Because it prevents that switching cost.
Yeah, it prevents the brain from constantly paying the performance tax of switching between a creative mindset and a transactional mindset.
Okay, but I can hear people pushing back on this already.
Of course.
Time blocking sounds amazing in theory, but what happens when my boss demands a response to a Slack message within 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Or when a client calls with a massive emergency? Not everyone has the luxury of ignoring the world for 90 minutes.
And Römer addresses that reality directly by contrasting two very different professional schedules in the text. He proves that adaptability is built right into the system.
Okay, how so?
Take an individual contributor, a software developer or a copywriter. Their primary value to the company is high-quality, focused output.
Right. They need to build things.
Yes. So their ideal architecture might begin at 8:30 in the morning with a 2-hour, heavily defended block of deep work, capturing their highest energy peak.
Makes sense.
They don't even open their email until 12:30, where they batch process every message in 30 minutes. The afternoon is reserved for collaborative meetings, but crucially, they build 10-minute buffers between every single call.
Oh, I love the buffer idea. Those buffers are essential mechanisms. They give your brain the space to jot down action items, flush the working memory of the previous conversation, and load up the context for the next one.
Exactly.
But what about a manager? Because they can't just hide for 2 hours.
No, they can't. A manager's role is inherently reactive. Their job is to unblock their team, facilitate communication, and handle crises.
Yeah.
But they still must single task. They just single task on management activities.
Oh, that's an interesting distinction.
A manager's schedule might start at 8 with a focused hour of strategic planning before the team even logs on. From 10 until noon, they execute back-to-back one-on-ones.
But they aren't multitasking during them.
No. During those calls, they aren't checking email. They are fiercely single-tasking on the human being in front of them.
Ugh.
And then they might have a dedicated hour at 3 o'clock solely for reviewing pull requests or approving budgets.
So it effectively removes "I have too many meetings" as an excuse. You don't abandon single tasking because you are busy. You design the architecture of your day more aggressively around the reality of your role.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? We've audited the distractions, we understand the neurology of cognitive load, and we have the architectural frameworks. What is the ultimate strategic payoff here? How does implementing this friction actually give a business, or you as an individual, a competitive advantage?
What's fascinating here is that Römer is demanding a fundamental paradigm shift in how the modern economy defines productivity.
The definition itself.
Yeah. For decades, both massive corporations and individual freelancers measured their worth by inputs. How many hours were you visibly at your keyboard?
Right.
How fast did you reply to that message? How many different software platforms were you juggling at once? It is an exhausting metric of visible performative busyness.
Performative is the perfect word. It's the illusion of productivity, where motion is totally confused with progress.
Exactly. The true competitive advantage emerges when you shift the metric entirely to outcomes shipped and quality delivered.
Because that's what actually matters.
Right. An organization that actively protects its employees' ability to single task will see a drastic reduction in catastrophic errors. They'll see a massive drop in the costs associated with burnout and turnover, and a significantly higher caliber of creative problem solving.
And on an individual level.
On an individual level, it makes you incredibly rare. You transform into the professional who consistently finishes high-impact projects, rather than the person who is perpetually working on a dozen things that never see the light of day.
Achieving that rarity requires dodging the 3 major blockers Römer identifies, though, which constantly threaten to shatter a well-architected day.
They do.
The first is overcommitting. If you default to saying yes to every new initiative, your calendar naturally fractures. You simply don't have large enough contiguous blocks of time left to protect.
And to combat overcommitting, you have to implement a mechanical filter, like the Eisenhower matrix.
Oh, I love the Eisenhower matrix.
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
You objectively categorize incoming tasks by urgency and importance. The mechanism of the matrix works because it forces you to make a decision about a task's priority exactly once.
Right. You don't hem and haw over it for days.
You decide it is not important. You delegate it or delete it, and it never enters your working memory again. It radically reduces the daily friction of reevaluating your to-do list.
The second blocker is tool sprawl. We touched on this with the digital audit. If you are trying to write a brief, a project management app, a team chat, a CRM, and a shared document drive are all open and pinging you with red notification dots.
Your focus is going to shatter.
Completely. The solution is aggressive consolidation. Close every single window that is not strictly required for the current time block.
And the final blocker is honestly the most insidious.
Context creep.
Context creep. This doesn't come from outside interruptions. It comes from inside your own workflow.
It's friendly fire.
It really is.
Yeah.
You are 90 minutes into deep research for a presentation, and you realize you need to verify a specific revenue number.
Okay.
You open a financial spreadsheet to find it, but while scrolling, you notice a strange discrepancy in a different column.
Oh, no.
You start digging into that discrepancy, pulling up old invoices, and suddenly 45 minutes have vanished.
You're doing forensic accounting instead of making your slides.
Yes. You are auditing a totally unrelated financial report, and your presentation is completely abandoned.
You completely fell down the rabbit hole because the boundary of the task wasn't respected.
You did. Overcoming context creep requires ironclad discipline to stick to the defined scope of the time block.
So what do you do when you see that discrepancy?
When you notice it, you do not investigate it. You grab that physical paper capture pad, you write down "investigate Q3 revenue discrepancy," and you immediately return to the presentation.
Put it on the external hard drive.
Exactly. You handle the new issue during a later, specifically dedicated administrative block.
It demands an incredible amount of self-regulation, but the dividends are undeniable. You reclaim your time, you protect your neurology from constant stress spikes, and the actual work you produce is fundamentally elevated.
It is a profound shift in how you operate. And, I would love to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you look at your schedule for tomorrow.
Let's hear.
What if, instead of feeling a false sense of pride over how many different tasks you touched or how rapidly you switched contexts to put out fires, you measured your ultimate success by how fiercely you defended a single block of uninterrupted time?
Wow.
What if your greatest professional achievement tomorrow is simply doing one difficult thing beautifully to total completion?
That is a phenomenal challenge to leave on the table. Look at your calendar, carve out that block, and defend it ruthlessly. Thank you for tuning in to the Smart Keys podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an insight. And we highly encourage you to read Felix Römer's full, detailed article for yourself. You can find the direct link waiting for you right down in the show notes. Reclaim your focus, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.